You're probably aware that we do have an early learning caucus here at the Capitol, and I think this is the fourth year. I'm trying to remember. I started it, and my emphasis was not only the fact that I have an early childhood background. I was an early childhood educator. I helped set up the at-risk program in the Turner School District, and then had the privilege of teaching in that for 10 years. And I do have my degree in early childhood as well. But that was a long time ago. And I've always felt dedicated to that, to our uh, our children as they begin, because if we get them off to a good start, as you know well, then their opportunities to be successful as they move through school and into their lives are so much better. It's funny, this weekend I was watching PBS, and I was watching, I'm trying to remember the presenter, but it was about, aging and the type of things to help you to address aging and to age gracefully and well. And he started out with talking about trauma and the impact. I'm going, okay. He's the impact that adverse effects can have on our lives long term. And he just listed 10 different things, and talking about his own family and their scores and how they've been impacted. And I thought, this is so, if we can have over and over more and more professionals talking about the impact of early experiences and what they do long term and how they have to be addressed. So with that, Emily, you want to? And I'll let my colleague here introduce herself.
Hello, Senator Kristen O'Shea.
So Emily, you want to begin?
Yes, thank you. There we go. Okay, there we go. Thank you, senators. I really appreciate the ability to come here. We have been getting together for the last few weeks since January. Every other week, we've been able to have the Early Learning Caucus, where the Partnership for Early Success, along with KAC, has been able to present some information about early learning. And today is the culmination of all the work that we have done since January. Today is our Early Learning Advocacy Day, and we really appreciate the attention you are giving. I have many of my colleagues in the gallery. We also have a room full of my colleagues across the way in KHI, because as we can see, it's standing room only here. We have a lot of people interested. I have some amazing people from our early childhood system who are coming to talk about the innovative business solutions that have been implemented in Kansas, so that you all can see the dynamic force that we have in our state who are working hard together, collaborating, supporting each other, coming up with all these ideas. And the reason why we're coming to you to say we need support, we need investment. And so we're asking that you pay attention. So with all that, I'm going to let's start getting to our attendees, and I'll let you call them up based on the list I gave you.
Thank you, Emily. And so we have Melissa Schoenberger with KDHE, Small Centers Pilot. Thanks, Melissa, for being here.
Thank you for having me, Madam Chair. As you shared, my name is Melissa Schoenberger. I'm the Section Director for Systems and Family Services, or Field Services, which I like to say is family services for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. What I want to share today is about our Small Center Pilot. Sorry, it's not picking up. There we go. Okay, is that better? Okay. The Small Center Pilot is really an innovative opportunity for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to think differently, to be on the cusp of a national trend of how we look at a service delivery with a mixed age group, with an opportunity for home providers to move into serving more children under the governance of child care center regulations, with some exceptions built in. What I am most excited to share, which you will hear real shortly after me, is we worked in partnership with a home provider, particularly in the southwest area of the state, where we know we have some really big childcare deserts. And we took up her challenge to do better as an agency, to let her have an opportunity to think outside of the box. And so when we used her blueprint as really a guide to look at how we do things. And again, very appreciative of Janica Knoll to continue to push us to do better. And her, she will share with you, we had that opportunity through the Accelerator Grant Fund. So when we look at opportunities for monetary incentives, she was able to do that in Clark County because of some grant funding afforded through the state. So I could go on and talk about the small center for a long time, but really, I really want you to hear from the boots on the ground who are operating and doing that. So that being said, I am going to stand for questions later if you have any more about the small center, but I want to hand it over to Janica.
Is Janica, is she on WebEx?
She is on WebEx. You can pull her on next.
Okay, yeah. So Janica Knoll, is that right? Is it Knoll? Is that right?
Yes.
So, and Janica's in Clark County. So Janica, go ahead.
Hi, thank you guys for having me today. My name is Janica. I am the owner and operator of Jay's Nest LLC. Back in June, went through the process of applying for the Accelerator Grant. And the reason I applied was just for this center because thank you. Sorry. I needed the funds to help get this idea up and off the ground and running. And there was no way that my family and I could do this financially on our own. So we were fortunate enough to be selected. Yes. Fortunate enough to be selected from many of the candidates. And with persistence, I was able to put this idea into action. And I presented the daycare for a more feasible way for rural communities to be able to support daycares, and with a small amount of workers to a larger amount of kids. Working alongside KDHE, the small center was born. The small center allows a higher staff to child ratio in a rural area. The numbers in daycare fluctuate from year to year very drastically sometimes. You may have one infant 1 year, and then you may have a baby boom and have, 7 babies. You never know. So the children who attend are mostly from Ashland, but I do have kids that have to come from surrounding communities because there's just no daycare in our area. I have one little boy that his mom brings him 17 miles every day to daycare. But this has allowed our community to address the scarcity of daycare in this area. With the grant money, I was able to, thank you, purchase a building that was already in our community, and it was just going to kind of sit there, and I don't know what would have happened to it, honestly. It's a nice building, and we were able to renovate it and turn it into what now is our small center. We opened in December, and my 2 other employees and myself are loving it. It's a great mix between being at your home with your daycare and having a center setting, I guess. We don't have the classrooms and stuff, but just having more kids and more area. And everything's coming together. We are continuing to work on some finishing touches that are just kind of falling into place still, with it being quite a process to get this going. And on behalf of rural communities throughout Kansas, I want to thank you guys again for the opportunity to present. And I look forward to seeing more daycares able to utilize the small center. And I'd love to take questions from you guys at the appropriate time.
Thank you so much. And I know that we will have some questions. I'm going to go ahead and go on with the other presenters, and then we'll come back with those questions.
Okay.
All right. And so our next presenter is Tanya Colm. And Tanya, did I say your last name right?
No,
okay.
it's okay.
What is her last name?
It's Tanya Kane.
Kane. Okay. Thanks, Tanya.
You're welcome. Yes, Tanya Kane, Interim Executive Director for Child Care of Kansas. I am excited to visit with you about just one of our projects that is an innovative project just finishing its first year in pilot phase. It's called Baby Steps. And I like to say what we did with this project is we really kind of flipped things on its head. We know we need care for infants in Kansas. And everybody, we want to open slots, and we agree with that. However, we also know from our years of experience and being in the early childhood field that we have family child care providers out there with infant slots that they are purposely not filling. And they don't fill those because of quite frankly, the cost. The more infants they take, that's the less older children they can take, which should be that way. Our infants need our attention. We want it to be that way, but that cuts into their income to do that. So what we did is we worked with a private foundation to help us make up that income for the provider. If they're willing, and we put them through some tests. We don't want providers just to say, well, I want more money, so please give me, I'll take infants. We put them through some questions. If it was a good fit, we have them take additional infants within their license, no more than 3, and we pay that gap that they lose that funding, and we get them up to that living wage of about $15 an hour. This was then using our already existing childcare programs. We are out mainly in Southwest Kansas right now. So we have about 64 family childcare providers and 66 infants out, and again, in those very rural areas that we've been able to place it in already existing childcare homes. Still need to get some new slots out there, but this was using the homes that were already out there. So it was a great fit. It's been very successful, but we just didn't place infants in childcare homes. We also brought in our partner, ks.gov, and had them do their infant toddler network, worked with providers, good activities, what to do with infants, and they're loving it. The providers love having the infant toddler specialist come in and talk to them and come up with activities. So not only are we putting infants in already existing homes, we're also making sure their qualities in these infants are getting some good quality childcare homes. We have a provider that will be coming, that's on WebEx too, that is in this program and just loving it. I will say, as a caveat, we were able to get 2 families who had twins infants into this program. That's huge, as I'm sure you can imagine. So they were really excited when that happened out in Southwest Kansas.
Tanya, do you want to share with the legislators how long your funding is for?
Right now, it was 1-year funding with a private foundation, but we are excited to announce that they've given us another year to continue the funding for these programs, so we don't have to cut it off. So,
thank you, Tanya. And so, since we're going to jump around here a little bit, so we'll go to Kat. Is Kathy's last name pronounced the same way?
it's not. She's going to switch it up on us. She is Cohen.
They're spelled the same way.
They are.
So Kathy Cohen is on WebEx, and she's using the Baby Steps pilot program. Kathy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello?
Kathy, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Kane. I am a Kane, an in-home child care provider serving the families of Kiowa County and Haviland. I'm here to speak today on the impact that the Baby Steps program has had on my program. When I first was approached about being on the Baby Steps program, I did not have any infants in my care. I'd gotten a call from a single mom that wanted to enroll her infant when she went back to work after maternity leave. And with the help that would be provided with this program, I decided to hold a spot for her. I was able to offer her the same rate that I do for the other rages and provide diapers and wipes for her child. Because of the spot an infant takes, I'm unable to take as many children as I could if I did not have an infant. So taking an infant means a loss of income. Thus, the Baby Steps program has really been a help. Being on the program has also given me the benefit of the Infant Toddler Network, which is through ks.gov. They've been very helpful and beneficial in my program. They have helped me with the mental health aspect of one of the children in my care. They have helped me receive sensory items and storage items for my childcare. The money I received from the program has helped me purchase items that I would not have been able to afford, such as books, games, and learning tools for my childcare. I also have used the money to purchase a curriculum to use in my program. My dishwasher just now quit, and I plan to use some of that money from this program to purchase a new one. I want to thank everyone involved in this program, and I urge you as a committee to keep this program going and to offer it to more providers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Kathy, so much. And Kathy, where are you located at?
Kiowa County by Greensburg.
Thank you. And we will hold for questions later. We appreciate you staying on.
Thank you.
Okay, that moving on to Casito now. So that takes us to Jen Pisney. Thanks, Jen.
Thought it was easier to pronounce than Cohen and Kane and all of that, but apparently not. So I am Jen Pishney, and I work for the Infant Toddler Specialist Network with Casito. We are loving this collaboration with Baby Steps with Child Care Aware, so that's been a lot of fun. I don't actually work with any of those programs, but it's been a lot of fun watching my colleagues get to do that. So thank you for allowing me to highlight a few of the supports that we provide for child care programs. Our organization is dedicated to providing professional development to early childhood care and education professionals. Our primary funding source is the Child Care and Development Fund distributed through DCF. I'm sure you all are well aware of all of that stuff. Two major Casito projects are the Infant Toddler Specialist Network, like we've discussed, and the Workforce Development, which includes the Kansas Career Pathway, which I'm sure you'll learn more about soon. Later, you will hear directly from people who are providing care and education for children every day. But we're also here to speak on behalf of those who are not here because they're caring for children right now. We recently conducted a workforce study to gather feedback from early childhood care and education professionals who currently work or have worked in the state. The purpose of the study was to better understand the workforce and the systems that affect turnover and workforce satisfaction. Participants were asked to please indicate your level of agreement with the following statement. My ECCE setting has a great deal of personal meaning to me. More than 75% of the respondents agree or strongly agree with this statement. That's fantastic. However, responses to another statement were less positive. They were asked, during the last few months, was there a time when, because of a lack of money or other resources, you were worried that you would not have enough food to eat? Greater than 25% responded to the question with occasionally, a moderate amount, or a great deal. And this absolutely reflects what I hear when I visit their workplace. Their work is so important to them, but it's really financially difficult to remain in the field. So a couple of instances from childcare workers in the field. I recently met with a family childcare provider who almost closed her program just a few months ago. She's been open for about 10 years and is one of 4 licensed providers in her small town. It's hard work and long hours, little financial gain, and often very little respect. Pride in her work and a commitment to serving her community kept her going, but was it worth the sacrifices? Then she found 2 ways to grow in her profession and keep her program open. She became a shared services county liaison through Child Care Aware of Kansas, so she can help others in the workforce to connect with support services so they too can remain in the workforce. She's also participating in a quality enhancement program through Casito, which I am able to work with her. Casito also provides support for our workforce and centers. My colleague Tara facilitates national director credential cohorts, and she shared with me the one participant said, the director credential program not only bolstered my organizational and leadership skills, but it also gave me a network of support in people who have been where I want to take my center. I'm grateful for their personal stories, the feedback from the instructors, and the support from Casito in our monthly meetings. There's great value in recognizing the importance of connections and the positive impact this has on retention in the ECCE field. They benefit from different support services so they can continue to care for our littlest ones. and families can rely on consistent and quality care. Thank you for allowing me to share a few of the supports that Casito provides to our early childhood care and education professionals, and I'm happy to answer questions later.
Jen, thank you so much. And I thought it was informative to know that you're not only, as the one child care provider that you mentioned, you're not only helping her keep her home daycare open, but also she then is using her education and her talents to help others. And I think that's important for us to think to remember as we look at some proposals that are being moved forward here in the state level to contract with a national outside sources to do what is already being done within our state, like Casito.
I do know that there are a lot of providers behind me who are also using their time and talents as mentors for other programs also. So
Thank you. That's great to know. Our next presenter is Heather Schraugberger with Head Start and Early Head Start.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm Heather Schroberger, Executive Director with the Kansas Head Start Association, or as we're known as KHSA. KHSA is a nonprofit organization that supports the Head Start grantees across the majority, 78 of Kansas counties. Kansas has 26 Head Start programs, and these are operated by a mix of public schools, community action agencies, and other nonprofit organizations. And Head Start programs serve approximately 6,300 young Kansans and their families through Head Start preschool services, through early Head Start services for infants and toddlers in childcare settings and in partnership with community childcare providers, and through early Head Start home visiting services. To enroll in Head Start, families must have a household income at or below federal poverty guidelines or meet other defined risk criteria. The Head Start workforce is part of the larger Kansas early education workforce. Head Start programs employ approximately 2,500 individuals with a range of experiences in education in early childhood education, social work, special education, and health. Head Start programs and staff in Kansas deliver comprehensive and individualized programming. They focus on supporting parents with childcare while they work or further their education. They provide the early education that promotes healthy child development and school readiness. They assure children receive ongoing developmental screenings and assessments. And they connect families with important resources such as health, mental health, and early intervention services. In the words of a Head Start staff member who shared her perspective with me about the impact and opportunities generated by Head Start in Kansas, there's so many to name: health and dental resources, support and encouragement, consistent high quality early childhood education, parenting classes, assistance with emergency services, and so much more. And while she shared that with me about a Head Start program, we know that that is true of the role of early childhood and childcare providers across our communities. Kansas Head Start programs, Head Start staff, and Head Start families are part of the Kansas early childhood system. Head Start staff are early educators, they're childcare providers, and they're home visitors. Head Start families participate in preschool, childcare, and home visiting services. In fact, Head Start in Kansas last year included services in 444 classrooms and 145 early education and childcare settings. What I want to share with you is that Head Start programs experience many of the same challenges as our early childhood and childcare colleagues, including recovering from recent shortage of qualified staff and limited capacity. And so the types of programs and supports that my partners have shared with and talked about today with you are important and beneficial opportunities for the early childhood and childcare system in Kansas, including Head Start providers, Head Start workforce, and Head Start families. I really appreciate your commitment to listening and understanding the needs of the early education system in Kansas and working to continuously improve the lives of our youngest Kansans and their caregivers. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today a little bit more about Head Start and how we worked within the early childhood system, and I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Heather. And that brings us into Shelby Buckerhoff, who has a large Senate honor.
Hello, my name is, can you hear me? Shelby Breckerhoff, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present today. From the time I was very young, I loved children, and in my heart, I just felt that the knowledge, there was nothing more important than giving them the best possible start. I began working with children as an assistant teacher at the age of 17, and I have served as a preschool teacher, special education teacher, instructional coach, program director, and now I am currently working to open and run my own center in Manhattan that will serve 100 children and their families. Throughout all of my years and all of my roles, I have never ceased to be amazed at the passion of educators not to only teach, but to also be learners. In 2023, I received a scholarship to obtain my national director credential that Jennifer mentioned. The training I received was challenging, and it pushed me to be a better educator, director, and a business owner as well. I've served as a teacher and a director for over 30 years, but I decided to open my own center and address some of those shortages, in part due to this training that I received. I'm entering into this new venture feeling fully equipped to be successful, and it's not something that I could have said without that training. I would have never attended this training if I had not received the scholarship through Casito. The financial award and the academic support that Casito provided ensured that I was successful and I received the maximum benefit from the training. In my role as a director, high quality training is vital to my staff for their continuing professional development. The state requires annual hours for all teachers, and these hours are needed to ensure that we are well versed in best practice regarding children and families. And when we utilize agencies such as Casito, Child Care Aware, and Kansas Children's Service League for trainings, we are not only able to find an extensive range of topics, but we are also assured that every training is of the highest quality and it contains the most up-to-date information available. Another vital component to my center's success in these recent years were the sustainability grants that we received. Without these grants, I'm not quite sure how we would have kept our doors open during a time that was extremely challenging. The funds allowed us to be an unwavering support to families, and they knew that they could count on us, even in the most trying of times. These grants allowed us to pay staff regardless of room closures and to provide families and children with a needed support of routine in an uncertain time. I have also helped 6 of my staff members to date receive scholarships from Casito to obtain their child development associate degrees. These scholarships were life-changing opportunities to my staff, and through this training, they are trained on a wide variety of topics based on their specific needs. The coursework challenges them to be the best educators possible and empowers them to achieve new heights of professionalism. There is a well-known quote by Nelson Mandela that says, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." These wise words highlight my goal, which is the desire to touch lives and change the world. In order to achieve lofty goals such as these, educators need to have the opportunity to continually grow and change to meet the needs of their students. As researchers continue to learn more about the importance of such topics as brain-based learning, emotional literacy, sensory integration, and inclusion, to name a few, teachers lovingly revise and adjust their skills to ensure that they provide the best possible outcomes for their students. In order to be the best they can be, ongoing professional development, continuing education, and scholarship opportunities are vital to the success of educators and early childhood students across Kansas. In order to retain these high-quality educators, centers desperately need assistance to provide fair wages, benefits, and incentives to reward current staff and to also encourage new staff to pursue this rewarding career path. To say that I strongly encourage support of early childhood programs would be an understatement. The training, scholarships, credentials, and economic support are vital to ensure that the youngest of our learners are given the best possible start to their education. As educators, we need to be lifelong learners, and these programs allow us to achieve that high standard that all of our children deserve. Thank you for your time and for your attention in these matters, and I will stand for questions at the allotted time.
Thank you, Shelby. And Shelby, just to clarify, I know you said Manhattan. So are you open to 100 already, or you're working towards it?
I'm working on it.
Oh, okay.
We're thinking May to June, depending on construction.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to April Schumann. April? And April is a small child care provider. or family child care provider. Sorry, not small, family.
Yes, I'm April Schumann of Gigi's Child Care Home in Wichita. Thank you for the ability to present my story to you today. I was asked to share my experience as an in-home provider for the last 32 years. However, my story actually started as a young child at the age of 10. I had a neighbor who had an in-home childcare. I saw how she supported the children with what interested them. She tended to their needs and had relationships with the parents. That is when I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom with my children and help other mothers know that their children are safe and nurtured when they had to be away. As a young mother, I became a registered home child care provider. My goal was to be a provider who had to clean areas of compliance during inspections. I was successful for many years and have prided myself on that accomplishment. However, during that period of time, there wasn't much support for the providers. We had to watch videos and read books and write handwritten reports for the 5 training hours. This included CPR and first aid. The food program was my only support, and it offered a small library of toys to check out, VHS tapes, and books for the training purposes. 7 years ago, I had some life changes and reopened an in-home childcare in Wichita. I became connected to other provider support organizations thanks to social media. Child Care Aware visited my program, and I was asked to provide guard care weekend and deployment care for the Army and Air Force. I became a military provider, and that's when I first heard about the National Association for Family Child Care and the accreditation through the organization. I couldn't afford the accreditation. However, about a year later, I was accepted by ks.gov for a cohort for providers to get accredited. Soon after I was accepted, the cohort then provided a NAFCC conference experience for us. I learned about the other accreditations for my childcare, and I was able to join groups of like-minded providers. I was invited to participate on the Workforce Development Advisory Group for the Core Competency Subgroup, and I was able to participate in the Links to Quality peer learning community, where I've been able to collaborate with other providers, center directors, and support workers in my area for the benefit of providers across the state. And 2023 proved to be an exciting year for my professional career as I received a Spotlight Provider by Early Childhood Professional Organization in the greater Wichita area. And I was also honored to be the Child Care Providers Coalition of Kansas Provider of the Year. As a seasoned provider who started this profession in the early 1990s, I value and appreciate all of the new resources available to our profession. I understand the regulations are written not only for the safety of our children we care for, but for the protection of the providers when they are followed. The continuing education hours are now in person or on different platforms online, and childcare professionals can learn new skills and improve their program while aligning with the new Kansas core competencies to define the progression of skills and knowledge learned. A provider can use the new career pathways to support professional goals, as providers are now recognized as educators, as we are the ones with the children the majority of the first 5 years of their life, when their brains are building the foundations for future learning, health, and life success. The new Kansas Early Learning Standards provide information and guidance on the developmental continuum of learning on what young children should know and be able to do with caring and knowledgeable providers. Thank you for allowing me to share my experience with in-home childcare, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, April, and congratulations on your recognition. So that's all our presenters, but I know that some of my colleagues have questions. I do want to ask one before we start, and I think that this is just a follow-up to what we've heard. There were both April and Shelby both mentioned ks.gov, and we had a presentation from ks.gov. So could I see the hands of the providers that have had received training that's been provided by ks.gov? You sure do. Thank you, and I appreciate that. So
Thank you. I've got a couple, so we might have to share. So since we're on the topic of Casito, yes.
Real quick, there are two people that were not presenters, but they are also available to answer questions as well. Brett Schmidt, sitting in the front row here, he is also a small pilot participant. And then we also have, I believe Lorena Kravitz is in the room. She would also be able to answer Casito specific questions as well. So wanted to make sure you had that information as we get questions going. Lorena. Yeah.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. I'll start with Jen with Casito. Two questions. You had mentioned in some of your testimony that had then been some mentoring and that the providers were able to do some training with others. So do you contract with them? Do you pay them to do some of that mentoring or training work?
I was talking about the Shared Services County Liaison, and that's actually a Child Care Aware of Kansas program. So that might be a
Do they pay them?
Is the mic on up there? Okay. Yeah,
I think so. Tanya Kane with Child Care of Kansas. So yes, Casito and us partner quite a bit. That's through our shared service. We have 8 shared service hubs across the state. And that particular hub does do some mentoring. They do pay. I don't know how much because that is very specific to that hub. So, in a very quick answer for you, and I can get you additional information, our 5 shared service hubs across the state do meetings with the providers in those areas. And so each one is tailored to the area. Simple, to kind of make it really easy. We know in rural Kansas, the providers don't need the same things in Kansas City, so they're very tailored to that area. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. So essentially there's shared service, there's opportunity for further revenue. So that's great.
It's not always probably with the providers. It might be with someone else. And they have all sorts of services. That is just not one of them. But that's also where our child care management system, CCSM, that's where providers get that for free right now for 14 years. They can log on. Brightwell and Playground are the 2 that we use. And that's the business platform. They can log on. They can run. Yes, I think you're Brightwell. We've had conversations. They can log on and use those 2 services for free, enroll their families, communicate with parents. They just do a lot of things. And we have regional community consultants who actually will sit down and help them use those platforms across the state.
I do have others. I want to share my time, but
for the time, I'm going to tell you, and this would probably be best as a conversation afterward. I've learned Melissa Bowles is actually one of the county liaisons for the small the hub, the shared services hub. So after the session, she would be also another one to talk to.
awesome. I'll do my follow up on Casito and then I'll hit my other ones later. But so Casito, is all the funding federal? You mentioned the funding comes through DCF, but I didn't know, like, if I could get a pie chart of how is it funded.
I don't have a pie chart. My savior.
I'm Patty Peschel, director for Casito. So she doesn't. So our funding is DCF. It's federal pass through CCDF dollars. Yes, 100% of our funding is through CCDF.
Thank you. So that leads to another thought. So I know that, like, for some of the subsidies, we're not utilizing as much of the federal pass-through dollars as we could be, right? I feel like a stat was 10% or something like that.
Well, it's $10, but
So anyhow, I guess that would be my question is, are you guys fully maximum federal monies, but are you all training, or do you help with the pass through of other federal DCF related services?
So we are grant funded through DCF. So we respond. We have the Workforce Development Project and the ITSN Specialist Network. And then our partners, Child Care Aware of Kansas, has the Consumer Ed grant and the Child Care Quality Initiative improvement systems. There's so many acronyms, which is part of that links to quality and the shared service network as they're referring to. The funding for these projects that I just mentioned are part of that requirement for there to be a 12% set aside quality dollars of the total amount of the CCDF funds. There's a requirement for there to be a 12% set aside for quality. So our funding comes out of that percentage. And there's also a requirement of that 12%, you have to have a maximum or a minimum of amount of, I believe it's 3% for infant toddler specific services. So in addition to training, so we have the professional development, the training and technical assistance, which would be the coaching services. We also offer the scholarships that several had mentioned as well with funding. Of course, we've been able to take advantage of the additional recovery funds to many of these scholarship programs that we have now, we will not have after June 30th because of the limited funding. So just to give a sense on the scholarships, since July 1 of this last year, so just in this last 7 months, we have awarded over 1,700 scholarships. And that's for individuals to either take courses within the state, that might be their first aid CPR training, maybe for them to attend their first state conference or a national conference, also to work towards accreditation. And in addition to that, we also support those attending 2-year and 4-year institutions as well. So.
And you're talking specifically about child care providers that are working through this program, and that you'd be able to provide 1,700 different scholarships at different levels.
Yes, 1,700 different. And for child care providers to be qualified for this, and child care provider must be a licensed program within the state of Kansas. So it might be a family child care provider, could be a center-based staff member as well.
Thank you.
First, apologies for having other things. And so I don't know that I heard all about your program or the establishment, but I have 2 great colleagues who I can catch up a little bit with. You know, sort of one of my questions isn't really for Casito, it might be for the individual trying to establish the center. And it's really, you know, we talk about a lot of different issues here at the State House, and certainly having health care insurance available to people is a big part of supporting their work and making it possible for them, you know, to do this. So is your center going to be able to afford to include healthcare insurance? Would it help if we had Medicaid expansion? Those kinds of things.
Yes. That is a goal of mine. I know going in that that's not something I will be able to offer. I need to go in and make sure that things are stable and set up and ready to go. But I'm hoping and praying that I will be able to, but I don't know that I will be able to do that. I mean, there's a very fine balance trying to pay all the bills and all the supplies and pay them a living wage and not get so pricey that your families can't afford it. So absolutely, yes, it is one of my highest goals to be able to provide insurance. Will I be able to do that? I don't know. Not at first, for sure.
So a follow-up, if, you know, I don't know how much difference there would be between the salaries that would allow people to get their own insurance under the Affordable Care Act versus, you know, an employer providing it. But that certainly should be our goal and would be much easier to achieve if we could expand Medicaid.
Yeah. I have one girl that I know did through the Affordable Care Act, and I know, I mean, for her it was still, the monthly payments were still a little bit of a struggle with what wages you make in early childhood. And I know a lot of people who have said, I would love to do that, but I can't afford to be an early childhood educator. So even people who are interested, you know, it's not an option for, you know, I think we could have a lot more amazing people in the field if we could pay competitive wages, fair working wages, and provide benefits. It would be a game changer.
I'll just follow up on that. So you mentioned about livable wage, so you will be paying above minimum wage. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, thanks.
On the same topic, thank you. I have wondered like what percentage of childcare employers, so if you're a center, if you're home based that hires some people, do provide healthcare. I've wondered that. So maybe that's something we can ask legislative research. Maybe you know a little, maybe you have an idea.
Tanya Kane with Child Care of Kansas. We don't have an exact percentage, but we've done a pool of child care providers, and it is very little. I think we were at about 20-ish%. It was pretty low. And that include family child care providers who are able to either purchase their own or have a spouse. Most of them do not have.
As a small business owner, I know like, yeah, it's like, it'd be ideal to offer that to myself or other employees, but it's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
In all honesty, we did not every provider replied to that. We just threw a quick survey out there, and
yeah, I've wondered that. Oh, Tanya, while I have you, if that's okay, a question for you. You talked about the baby steps program and being able to fill in that gap, right? So if they're taking more infants, couldn't take more older kids, filling in the gap of what that pay would have been. What is the operating, like what is that for you to help one in-home do that? What is the cost?
my program manager for that is here today, so I'm going to put her on the spot.
It varies because it's tiered level. So obviously, the more infants they take, the higher we pay them. For one infant, it's around $2,425. 2 infants is $3,388, and these are quarterly payments we do. And then 3 infants is $4,325, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks.
I had a question for Janice. Janice online. Janica, sorry, Janica.
That's okay.
Janica, you had mentioned that when you were talking about your program in Ashland, you had mentioned working or some of the help that you received. I was just curious as to whether you got you applied through KDHE for your license, but did you get an exception so that you could have a different number of children and space?
It's not an exception, if I'm correct. Melissa would know better. I think it's just.
I know that this was also lunch and nap time. I'm wondering if we've lost her at this point, but I bet either Melissa or Brett could answer the questions.
Or either one, yeah.
Melissa Schoenberger, Child Care Licensing, KDHE. Because we formulated the pilot under the governance of the Child Care Center regulations, there's actually a regulation built in that if you cannot maintain or present a plan to the department for self-contained units, you can present an alternate plan. So it's already been embedded within regulation for these small center pilots to provide us with an alternative use of space. And then we granted all of our participants blanket exception if you are part of the pilot. We want it really an easy, well, not an easy because this work is not easy, but we wanted an opportunity to be able to, if you were a home provider and you had no experience in a child care center, but you had all your training, you had all that wealth of other components that they could easily transition into that program director. So we provided a blanket exception for our program director qualifications. And in both of our pilots that we have running now, I'm happy to say they came from a home center or a home to a center. So it's been really exciting to see them bring their knowledge and that home feel, but really capture that under the safety and the governance of the center. program that they're operating. We also we have a regulation that says older and younger children can't really intermingle, but that negates the whole purpose of that mixed age delivery. So we gave a blanket exception for that. Truly, it's just so amazing to walk into these facilities because they are centers, but they feel like a home. And we also looked at a different staff-child ratio. And so we capped these facilities at 6 infants, but we looked at a 1 to 6. But we, as Janica expressed, we then, after you did your 1 to 6 with the infants and toddlers, then we let our small center pilots move to the higher capacity that we already allow for centers in the preschool age group. So it really allowed them to really function with up to 24 children with still 3 staff, which was a huge monetary incentive for our pilots to function. Brett would probably know the numbers a little bit more because he is an owner and operator of a small center. So if you have more specific questions on the monetary side, I would defer to Brett Schmidt.
Let's say how many are participating under the small center pilot?
We have 2 that are open, and because we originally projected in our proposal 3. We have 2, and then we are in conversations with a facility in Douglas County, and who, of course, they're a community that's looking for funding opportunities, and then in conversation with another in McPherson. So really, and my goal and hope is that what we learn in the small center pilots, we can also be a game changer to some of our centers and making this same one center pilot as a unit in urban centers. So really have high hopes. We're also in an evaluation process to make sure that any exception that we put in place, that we didn't put children in harm. And we've done, our participants are getting extra surveys. And so far we have really had positive results. And I had the opportunity to participate in Janica's survey, and she was all smiles. The kids were all smiles. I was very excited. You know, there were some violations, but nothing that we would deem adverse and harmful. And so it is just it's a good facility that I have high hopes for the state of Kansas.
Thank you. You had another question.
Yes. So similar along these lines, like it's exciting to see us experimenting with these new innovative options. And so is this going to be in the new regs that are going through the AG, or how do we instill what you've experimented with and learned, and we know it's working well, so that it is more broadly available?
The program director qualifications are in the new proposed effective when they become effective regulations. The other exceptions are not, because we are in a pilot. We didn't want to stall our regulations, and as you know, it's a long process in the state of Kansas to get regulations effective. But that doesn't mean the department still doesn't have the opportunity to do blanket exceptions. And so we do have the opportunity to make these more permanent until we can go through that next level of process, when we can make them actually. We don't believe at this point we have to make them a new program type, because we already have the authority embedded in our regulations and our statutes right now to do any of these pilots. We are in conversations with other states. Very exciting, because Kansas truly is on the cusp. Other states are promulgating regulations first. And really, I appreciated the way that we are doing this pilot, because then it gives an opportunity to learn and make sure we're right sizing the pilot versus let's put a bunch of regulations in place and then see if they work. We are experimenting, doing some exceptions so that we can right size what's appropriate for Kansas.
That's good. Thank you. I also had heard, last I heard from a provider who wanted an kind of like a pilot program option for only infants. So they just love the infants. And wanted kind of that like hybrid in-home center for infants. Is that something that's being looked into?
In the small center pilot, you could actually just be an infant toddler facility only because of the 1 to 6. I would encourage you to get them in touch with me, and we can explore what that would look like.
And just to follow up, So you mentioned about, of course, this is a pilot, but then also exceptions that you, through rules and regs, already have that. And so I'm kind of forgot the number, but how many exceptions were made in applications last year?
I do not have that number available to me today, but we would be more than happy to get you that information.
I know I've been. I was going to say I don't want to say it because it was provided to me earlier. I mean, not today, but I mean it's a large number. I was so I think it just says that there's a lot of flexibility and from the department's perspective already when it comes to rural rights, you have that ability to make those exceptions um, on when with licensing.
And it's a variety. What I would like to stress is that when we look at an exception, it's a variety, and we do. Yes, you're right. We do entertain a lot, and we do process a lot because we want to make good choices for facilities who might need that extra assistance.
Thanks so much. And I'll just my last question I think is for Shelby again. So Shelby, you took advantage of the accelerator grants, correct? And also, I think you mentioned, did you also benefit for the funding that came out, the ARPA funding that came out during COVID to help you?
Sustainability.
Yes. The sustainability grants to help you. I think that's so important to remember how helpful that was to so many providers, the sustainability grants, and how it kept us having a.
Couldn't have kept our doors open because we had, families that were going through financial crises. We were shutting down, and families that were wanting refunds because we were shut down, and I couldn't retain my staff without those. So it was very important. And I did receive an accelerator grant, which is also part of the reason I'm opening my own place. Like I said, the national credential. So I've a lot of funding and a lot of support.
For the body's information, you may already know this. There's a request for $30 million for accelerator grants, which can only go to those who have not already received accelerator grants. That's funding is really it's on the chopping block. So maybe I should say it's already being chopped. But I would encourage you if that's something that's you see impactful and helpful for the growth of child care in Kansas, that you reach out to your legislators and just share with them how important you think it is to keep that in the budget, in the CIF budget. It's state general fund, $30 million. I'll just mention it again. Any other questions from legislators? What is there anybody there that wanted to share something they think that we haven't heard? Thank you so much for taking your time. And I know that for some of you, probably meant not being able to be the child care provider today in your setting, wherever that's at in the state. We certainly appreciate you. We know that because of you, we know that parents are able to go to work and feel secure that their children are in a safe setting, and that they know that when they get to that location to pick them up, that they'll be ready to spend the evening enjoying them. And you keep our industries in our state running, and we want to make that's always good for all of Kansas. So thank you so much for being here. I hope that I'm sorry that there wasn't a bigger crowd here, but as I said earlier, the House is still in session. But always keep in mind that whenever you have a question, you can always reach out to, of course, the organizations that you are under as well for information. But you can reach out to your legislator, and if you don't, if they don't seem responsive, sometimes they're busy with other things. I am invested in early childhood, and I always like to hear questions that you have so that I can work on those issues in the future, and my colleagues as well. And as you can see, my one colleague, Liz, she's helping to add to the population of Kansas in the very near future. So she is definitely interested in childcare. Thank you so much for being here.